This is Nick Cardillo with the YardFathers Premier Outdoor Living. We specialize in design and build of outdoor living spaces, and I am a hardscaper.
Welcome to the I Am a Hardscaper series on the How to Hardscape podcast, where we sit down and interview a hardscape business owner and do a deep dive on how they became a hardscaper and how they operate their business. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, Nick, let's get to know a little bit more about yourself. Give our audience a little bit of context about you, how you got started in the industry, and kind of what progressed until today in your business.
I think we all, as far as hardscapers, kind of ultimately start, our own companies and become owners for the same reason. In a broad statement, I know the circumstance is always different. For me, I guess mine's a little different from what I've heard on your podcast. Just from talking to people, when I started this company, I had no prior experience in anything landscaping, no prior experience in any business ownership or anything as far as that goes. So I kind of got into the business on a fluke. I started this company with another person that I met through another job I was working, and we kind of just did it as a side business, and we were just maintenance only. And as that progressed, we started doing more landscaping. My partner decided that this isn't what he wanted to do, so I bought him out. And I kind of became a little bit more passionate about it as things went on.
Partnerships are difficult, and especially when you come to a point in the road where you both have different aspirations, different goals. What was it like when it came down to it to kind of go separate ways in your partnership? Was it, and I'll leave it to you about how in depth you want to go into this, but was it an amicable split? Was it you guys, decided that you had two different goals? How did that kind of go down in terms of that final split in your business?
Yeah. It wasn't, we weren't partners for long. Like I said, we kind of started as just kind of a side gig to see if we can make some money. We were both at that point kind of just tired for working for other people. My partner had some experience in the landscape field, so I kind of just learned from him. I personally didn't even know how to string a weed eater. So we were really just kind of doing it to make some extra money. But we weren't partners for long. I mean, it was maybe 4 months into the business where he realized that it definitely something that he didn't want to do. And I was trying to become committed. It started to grow on me, just the feeling of being an owner of something and building something. My passion wasn't really in what we were doing as far as the maintenance, but just the fact that we were building this from the ground up, and it was kind of like ours. It was mine. So it was kind of a thing that we both decided on, and at the same time, there was a little bit of resentment that I wanted to kind of push him out, but that didn't last very long. So it was kind of an agreed upon, decision on both our parts.
Gotcha. So what was the catalyst to start this kind of side business in landscaping specifically? Was there somebody that approached you guys to say, hey, I've got this job, or like you said, like no real prior experience, but what was the reasoning behind landscaping really?
The only reason is that my partner's father owned a power equipment company, so he knew how to ride a zero turn. And it just seemed like a very easy business to start. We had a truck, a trailer, and buy a mower and some weed eaters. So he had all that equipment. So we had the equipment available, and he had the know-how. And neither one of us knew anything about business or about, doing anything on our own. And it just seemed like the simplest step was to just do something that we already had access to the equipment for.
Absolutely. So where in this journey does hardscaping come into play? Where do you start to kind of implement that more into your business? Have that become a predominant business model for you?
Well, the maintenance and the landscaping side progressed for probably 3 years. Like I said, I had no experience, no knowledge, so I spent a lot of time just learning how to do things. And little by little, we would do more landscaping and, just timber steps or planning and small retaining walls and stuff like that. I just got a request to do a paver patio one day, with like a little block wall, a little segmental wall. And just like, I was already didn't know what I was doing with everything else. So I figured I could go ahead and try this. So, and we did, we used to do like a lot of flagstone patios and stuff. So I had a little bit of knowledge of kind of what I was doing, but nothing with pavers or block or anything in that matter. So I took it on. I had no idea. I YouTubed how to do stuff. I'm pretty sure the pavers were from Lowe's, some Belgard pavers from Lowe's. We used like Cornerstone block. I just did it as it was said from the internet, basically. A road bond base compacted with concrete sand, an inch. And actually, I've seen it the other day. It actually looks pretty good still. But I also, at that time, was just getting into social media. So I posted that picture and I got bashed by a local landscaper because my caps on my wall were not cut. So I had these huge wedge gaps in them. And that was my first experience with like social media. But it also, that being said, it's, don't be afraid to post your stuff, because from that point on, I knew how to cut caps on the top. So there's always that.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it that first job that kind of put the seed of inspiration into you to like further get into hardscapes, or did that come a little bit later? Or how did that kind of progress for you?
Yeah, well, I guess, like I said, the maintenance and the landscape wasn't really passionate for me. It was more just owning the business. So once I did that job, and it was just something about the pavers and the patio. It was like actually building something that I kind of fell in love with it. And not so much on that job because there was so much to learn and a lot of work. But I probably did three more right after that. And they were actually really big. I probably lost money on all of them because I wanted to do them right. So we had to redo a lot of stuff, a lot of research. But once I did probably three or four of them, I kind of just fell in love with it. And that's what I wanted to do. I think once I learned that I could actually do that and make it look good, and I posted on social media and people are liking it, feeding my ego a little bit as well. It's kind of from that point on, that's what I decided I wanted to do. And I kind of lost interest in anything maintenance or landscaping, and I got rid of the maintenance, and still just did landscaping just because that's where most of our work was coming from at that time.
Going back to that, into where you are today, where you're building these incredibly designed, beautiful spaces now, can you give our audience a little bit of, I guess, like how did this kind of snowball from doing that initial job and not necessarily knowing how to cut caps to now where you are today and doing these beautiful outdoor spaces? How did you build the skills to be able to have the confidence to go out to not only quote these jobs, but to also now build these incredible spaces? How did that snowball?
I think it was just a passion for it. Like I think at that point it kind of came to, I don't want to do the maintenance or the landscape. The landscape's always part of it, but it's like I kind of felt like that's what I wanted to do. I thought it looked really good, and it felt good doing it. I seen in my guys that they enjoyed it more. And I think from kind of that first year of doing the hardscaping is when I started kind of reaching out to outside sources of going to ICPI, getting certified there, doing the advanced classes, the NCMA course, reaching out to people on social media, just a lot of research and a lot of, I guess, a lot of kind of, I don't want to say practice, but messing things up and redoing them. And that's kind of unfortunately because I don't have the prior experience, or didn't, that's kind of how we became able to do everything the way that we do it now. We just really learning from our mistakes and making sure that it's done correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And at what point in this process, because you started with the landscaping and maintenance and doing that on the side, at what point did you decide to go all in on this?
I mean, it was when I bought my partner out. So it was probably 4 months after I started my company.
Gotcha.
I just decided. And I mean, I was only making, $250 a week for probably almost a year. At that point, I didn't have too many responsibilities. I didn't have a wife and kids like I do now. So it wasn't horrible. But yeah, kind of right off the bat, really.
So give our audience a little bit of a time frame from that first job that you did hardscaping to today. How long did it take you in terms of that evolution?
It's probably been almost 6 years now.
Going back to that time where you start to do hardscapes, where were those initial leads coming from for somebody out there that wants to get into hardscaping, maybe is in landscaping maintenance? Where did you start to get that snowball rolling in terms of leads for hardscape specific work? Was it from existing clients that you're doing landscape maintenance, word of mouth? How were those leads starting to come in?
I mean, that was some. So word of mouth and existing customers. But like I said, we were kind of, they didn't know we really did that stuff. If I could go back, I'd do things differently. But I think what I was doing at that point was paid leads. So I was probably using Home Advisor or something like that, and trying to just get as many leads in as possible.
And then as that starts to evolve up until today, where are the majority of your leads coming from now?
Well, so we've built a brand locally. So our name is known. For me, I think the important thing is the brand. The website looks really well. I have a lot of work done with SEO and the website. Google ads, that's the majority of our leads today is either from just organic search or paid ads.
Okay, so you mentioned you would have done things differently from the start there. Is that in terms of, and we're talking about leads here, is that in terms of you wish you would have invested into that website SEO from the very start? Like what is that sort of specific thing that you would have done differently from the start?
Yeah, I think that, invested more in the SEO on my website and the brand, but also, reaching out to the existing customers, kind of putting myself out there more as far as just locally or on social media or anything like that. I pretty much relied on the paid leads, which we don't use now. And I probably never, I never will again.
When a lead contacts you, whether that's through your website, through a phone call conversation, where do you start with that conversation? What kind of questions are you asking? What are you trying to do to essentially pre-qualify that client to see if they're a good fit for you?
So so even on my website, I try to divert everybody to our contact form on our website. I try not to make my phone number visible. And then when people do call me, even with a conversation, I'm happy to talk to anybody about what they want, but I always still make them go through the website, go through the form. They'll put their budget, what they're looking for, description of what they're wanting, their address, names, all that stuff. And we also charge for our consultations.
So let's get into that. Why do you charge for consultations?
It's kind of the last screening process for me.
Yeah.
For me, I'm still administratively a one-man show. For the most part, I have third parties do stuff. So it's a lot of time to do leads and to spend the time that you need with the clients that you want to work with. So just the initial investment from them to know that they're serious. Typically our success rate is a lot higher than it used to be without that consultation form. And we're spending a lot less time where we could be doing other stuff.
Yeah. Do you find there's less pushback with that consultation charge because of the branding you've created, because people kind of know and seek you out?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think it's, demographic. I spent, probably a few years trying to figure out how to reach the people that I wanted. And I think when you're charging people for a consultation, and you have that website and you have that brand, it kind of just speaks for the quality itself. I also kind of make it worth it as far as, we give them a design as well. So it's part of that consultation. So we'll get a 3D rendering and overview plan.
Gotcha. So that's perfect. Coming into my next question here is, once you establish that initial consultation with them, they're good with the cost and they know they're getting a design. When you go meet with them, what kind of questions are you asking them? What kind of things are you trying to get out of them to know what you're going to include in that design, what you're going to be doing for them?
Yeah. Typically, so when I go to meet a client, I typically just let them talk. I really just want to know what they're wanting, not specifically or like colors or products or anything like that, but what it is that they're trying to accomplish, with their space. And then from there, I will give some suggestions. It used to be different. I used to talk longer and kind of go over what I'd like to do and stuff like that. But now it's because we do the design. It's more of, I let that speak for itself. And there's 3 reasons why we started doing the designs. One is because it does give the client, it gives them that experience of they know what they're getting, that kind of like wow factor. They can see what their space can actually look like. The second thing is that we based our estimates off of that design. So we're both on the same page. There's no misunderstandings. They know exactly what they're getting. We know exactly what we're doing. And then the third part is for my crew, so they know what exactly they're doing.
Absolutely. And then when it comes down to presenting that design, how do you take that, especially as a one-man show, your time's limited. When you're going to present the design, are you going to just email it over to them with some notes? Are you going to meet with them in person and present it to them? Does it depend on the situation? How does that go about?
I email. I think, I would say that in person would probably have some sort of impact that would be, positive. You're there, you're spending the time. I don't really have that time at the moment. So we just email, we send notes, we communicate that way. If I ever have to go out there, happy to go over it in that way. But that's kind of where we start after that. And I don't give an estimate until the design is approved.
That's interesting. And can you talk about your kind of thought process around that?
Well, it's kind of a time thing. So if I build this design, and like I said, I don't necessarily get and go over specific things that, as far as 100% everything that's going to be in there, unless they, ask for it. So it's just kind of a time. Like I would have to write up an estimate. If we have to amend the design, then I have to change the estimate. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page and is what they want before I do, their price. And I also want to get them passionate about their project before they see a huge number and get scared off.
Yeah, and I'm sure obvious with most people, getting that budget out of them is a crucial part of the process to be able to do this and to know what you're going to include for them in that design. So my question to you is, if that client is so you've got that form on your website, you can get the budget through them, but I'm sure every once in a while you get a client that is difficult for them to put their budget into that form, or even when you go meet with them, it's a little bit difficult to get the budget out of them. How do you take that? How do you ask them for their budget? How do you, if they're not willing to give you their budget, how do you kind of work around that so that you're not putting, overloading features into the design and then overwhelming them with a number? How do you go about this?
Well, I like, on the form and then in person, I try to get a general budget. And typically if somebody says $50,000, depending on really their situation, which you don't know, typically though, it can go up to about 70, or $60,000. So I don't go crazy. Like I said, I listen to what they want a lot, and it's basically all there. I'm not adding too much stuff, but I try to stay within their budget as much as possible. And then we can always, like I said, we can always amend everything if it's just too much.
And then when it comes down to actually landing the job, how do you go about your payment plans with a client? Do you have a set amount of percentage you take up front? You take during the job if it's a longer job? Does it depend on the job? How do you go about the payment plans?
So we do 30% when accepted to hold the spot. We'll get another 40 like a week before we start, and then whatever the remaining balance is once we're done.
That leads into my next question, which, sometimes difficulty with payments is the answer to this next question, but it is, do you have a horror story that you've experienced with a client, with clients in the past? It could be around payments. It could be around anything else. It could be also things that happen on a job site. Do you have a horror story that you'd want to share with our audience to kind of help them understand things that can happen as a contractor in this contractor life?
I haven't had anything too extreme. I will say that most of my payment client horror stories is what my clauses and policies in my contract are based off of. So typically, I had a client that had a failing driveway, asphalt driveway. It was obviously sinking already. And we tried to stay off it, but the last day we were loading stuff on it and it sank a little more. And he wanted me to pay for his entire driveway. So I was kind of came to an agreement that I'd take a couple grand off his bill. Just because I wanted to get out of there. I had another one where we were supposed to put a patio in and we dug down and it was wet. And we ended up digging down about 16 feet and there happened to be a spring there. And it was basically going to cost the guy another 10 grand to fix the situation. He didn't want to pay for it. So he spent basically the budget that he was supposed to get a patio on for us to just dig it up and fix what we messed up, which was unfortunate. But I mean, that's really it. I did have a general contractor not pay me about 16 grand for an installation we did.
Yeah. And then how do you kind of overcome those difficulties? Like that one with the spring, I'm sure that's a tough one to swallow because you've already, likely maybe put your order in for the product. You are already forecasting that sale to come in. And then, you run into that issue. You have to bring it up to the client. The client is not happy. How do you overcome something like that? Or even a missed payment from a general contractor? How do you kind of continue to move past these struggles that you might experience?
I mean, they're always hard. It's always a bad day. But I think with anything, all those situations have to be looked at as like a learning growth experience. So how do I prevent this from happening next time? What do I have to put? What kind of policies do I have to put in place so I'm protecting myself, my guys, and everything, so this doesn't happen again? Or what did I do wrong? Et cetera, et cetera. So I try to look at it as much as possible as a learning experience. I can either stand there and be upset and mad about it and ruin weeks, months, or I can, just grow from it. And it's kind of how I've done with my business from the very beginning. Is all the stuff, even if I don't make money on something, I need to get something out of it. That'll make me better in the future.
Yeah, there's no way through it but forward. I like your mindset around this, Nick. But as we come to installation practices, tools, equipment, anything that you really stand by in your business when it comes to the installation side of things, products, like I said, tools or equipment, any worthy notes of your business that really help you day in and day out that you'd want to talk about here?
Yeah, there's a bunch, and I hope that it's ever changing. I think installation process. One of the biggest things is we started off at the standard base road bond, concrete, sand, and I just started seeing, I think mainly on Instagram, people doing the hybrid base up north, and I gave it a try. Just all the benefits that were being talked about is worth trying. And first time I did it, loved it. And we haven't went back since that first time trying.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a huge benefit, definitely in the hybrid or the open graded base. And we hear that a lot on the podcast, which is awesome. What about tools that you've implemented since that first installation? And it could be as simple as just like a piece of equipment, or a little bit more complex, just to give guys that are definitely just starting out to something to set their eyes on to put into their business in the future.
Yeah. So important. I mean, the tools of the industry have just changed everything for us. It saved so much time, our backs, just everything. We mainly get our tools from Pave Tool or, through Site One, but the IQ saws, we start out with wet saws, miserable things. The dustless, they can be a little slower, but they're just better in every way. As far as the mesh, your health, that whole thing. I mean, screening tools, the hammers, the clamps, the suction tools. I mean, in my experience, all those things have taken time to get used to. So we'll get a new tool and my guys will be like, I don't like it. And I'll do it. And I'm like, yeah, it's all right. And then a week later, it's like, how do we even live without this thing? And then you see you see how much time it saves. You see how much less worn out you are from using these things. So for us, it's just new things are coming out all the time. And an example is like the other day, we're doing Easy Joint, and I love Easy Joint, the final product, but I always hated installing it. We went to the hardscape show this year up north, and a guy told us about a hydro broom, which is a simple thing. It's just a broom with a water hookup. And I got one. He's like, you'll love Easy Joint once you do it. I put it on. It was well worth it. I mean, it made it so easy to install the hydro or the Easy Joint with the hydro broom that it's just amazing. Like the certain tools that make everything that much better. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Definitely. And something as simple as that can have such a major impact, especially with something so tedious and time consuming to install, like those semi-permeable products like Easy Joint. Definitely something to look at. As we come to a close here, Nick, 2 more questions. Do you have anybody that you want to give a shout out here that has helped you along the way, mentors offline or even online that you look to for inspiration, exchange words with, whatever it is? Do you have anybody that you want to give a shout out here on this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, Danny with Niche Gardens. I've been friends with Danny for a little bit now, and we're always talking back and forth. it's really important to have someone like that you can bounce ideas off of and just, learn from, grow together. Um, Besides that, like I said, my prior experience in the field is really nothing. So I didn't have anybody locally. So it's people like Danny and just social media in general, watching, these guys on Instagram and stuff and how they progressed inspired me to do a lot of things. Like even, let's see, it was probably 6 years ago when I joined Instagram or Facebook. And I think that's when I first started following Sean. I don't know how to say his last name, from Premier Outdoor. And I remember, because it might have been Facebook, because I don't remember seeing any paver pictures on his thing. It was his carpentry. So I started following him because he posted something on a deck, and I was like, man, that looks great. And then I remember him posting something about asking how to start a YouTube video. And I remember thinking, like, God, this guy's wasting his time. And then I kind of forgot about him. And then it was like, I don't know, a year or so later, I seen that one picture he did. He did the drone shot of the huge pool with all the pavers and everything. And I was just kind of blown away about it. And then it kind of in that same time frame, it's all guys like him or like RC Outdoors or all those guys that I look at what they're doing, just really the brotherhood, and it inspires me to do different things. It inspires me to try, different patterns or inlays. It's really where I get my inspiration from, is seeing all these other guys work and seeing how, the quality and how beautiful it looks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with you with that. Especially with Instagram being such a visual platform, just getting that visual inspiration scrolling through the feed is really incredible. And as we close things down here, Nick, I've got one final question for you, but it's a big one. Going back to the very beginning, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew from the very start, whether it was starting the landscaping maintenance division or business, or starting in hardscapes? But what is that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very start?
I can only pick one.
Only one.
And it's funny because it has nothing to do with that. It would probably be on the business end. I wish I knew my financials, or, how to job cost and how to just figure out my profit margins and my net and everything. I feel like that could have saved me a lot of pain, sorrow, and time. And I feel like it would have progressed my business a lot faster than it did as well.
That's an excellent thing to bring up. Knowing your numbers, super important to running your business. And Nick, thank you so much for your time to be able to do this interview, to be able to get back to the industry. Where can our audience go to learn more about what you've got going on over there?
Website is www.theyardfathers.com. Instagram page is YardFathers LLC. Same with Facebook.
Amazing, Nick. Thanks for your time here.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go check out Nick at YardFathers LLC on Instagram. Go give him a follow and thank him for coming on the show and sharing his story with us today. Let us know who you want to hear from in future episodes of the I Am a Hardscaper series on the How to Hardscape podcast by reaching out to us. We are at How to Hardscape anywhere. You can find us Instagram, Facebook, or contact us by email, contact@howtohardscape.com. And we'd love it if you subscribe to the podcast, left us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or follow us and hit that notification bell on Spotify. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.